Welcome back to Your Lake Fork Guide. Got another episode of the Guides Network here today. You know, we're getting into the fall period. Fall means they're chasing bait. One of the most efficient baits and one of the best baits to get bites in the fall period is going to be a swim jig. So today I thought I'd bring this video to you that I made for the 6 Cents YouTube page. Bring it over here, let you guys enjoy it. It's me breaking down all the different ways and details, just like we always do on the Guides Network, giving you all the details of how I go about using a swim jig to catch more and bigger fish. Now, we filmed this video during the wintertime under flooded conditions. We do not have flooded conditions. It is not wintertime, but the gear and the techniques that I use to get bites on the swim jig will still apply, and you just can't fish much better baits than the swim jig during the fall period. So check this out. Thanks for watching, and I certainly hope this helps you guys. I'm going to reach for the 7.5 heavy with the moderate action tip. I'm going to throw a 20-pound or even 17-pound fluorocarbon, and I'm going to use a medium gear ratio reel. This situation, when you've got all this flooded cover, I like to step up my setup and do it a little bit differently. In this situation, I like to go to the 7.3 heavy Lux Series rod, and I like to put 50-pound braid on it and step my gear ratio up to a 7-to-1 type reel speed. The reason I'm stepping up the ratio is I got to keep that bait higher in the water column, coming through some of that flooded thick cover. But with this setup right here, it's going to allow you to get in and out of grass, whether it's hydrilla, flooded mats, anything that you can think of, even if it's little buckbrush bushes on the shoreline. I know you guys out at Rayburn got some flooding going on too, and y'all got a lot of buckbrush. Boys, I'm telling you, when they ain't out there on that edge of that grass with that trap, you can get that swim jig and get up in there in that buckbrush and go to cleaning them out now. But you want to make sure you have that braid, because especially when you get one of these better than average size fish on that East Texas is so known for, these big 5, 6, 7 pound fish, you need that braid to get them out of all that junk that you're fishing this bait in. And 6 Cents has got your back there too, because they have, in my opinion, the best swim jig on the market in their regular standard swim jig. But they also have a Divine braid swim jig that is designed for throwing in heavy cover on heavy line. It's got an extra beefy hook, so you can really horse those big fish in and out of that thick cover. So you heard me say that I think this is the best swim jig on the market. So now you want to know why. Well, here's a few reasons, guys. One is the design of this head. Anytime you're fishing any kind of jig, the head design is a very important factor. And if you look at the bottom of the head on the 6 Cent swim jig, it's got a real flat bottom to it. It helps that bait keel and stay stable as it comes through the water column. A lot of swim jigs will kind of wander and walk and wobble on you. This one stays smooth, steady eddy, coming through all that cover, which is exactly what I want. Another one that's one of the biggest factors to me is going to be the screw lock. They have a screw lock design on the shank of their hook to hold your trailer. Now this is a big deal, and let me tell you why. When you're fishing a swim jig and you're throwing it in heavy cover, your trailer, be it a swim bait trailer or a flapping crawl trailer, whatever it is, your trailer is going to grab different pieces of cover. The fish a lot of times will hit this bait and not get it. They'll pull on the trailer. But if you look on a normal jig trailer, man, you can just, there's no way, I'm pulling hard right now, guys. That trailer would be jerking off there. But on this bait right here, once I've got that thing screwed onto that screw lock, I've gone a month at a time without changing my trailer because that screw lock holds it so well. And that lets me be a lot more efficient, lets me cover that water that much faster, which I need to in this situation. And it also saves me a little bit of money on plastic. Let's talk about my favorite colors. I'm gonna try and keep it simple for you guys. I own a lot of different colors of 6 Cent swim jigs, and kind of every little variance of color has its place. There's 3 standards for me that I must have in my boat in plentiful quantity at all times. And number 1 for me is going to be a shad pattern bait. You know, a lot of our lakes up here where I live, shad is the main source of forage. When I'm throwing a shad pattern type bait, I like what they call table rock shad. It's a white based bait, shad pattern. It's got a little bit of chartreuse mixed in, just a light amount. It's got a little bit of a purple or lavender type color mixed in, just a light amount of that as well. So it's basically a white bait with some purple and chartreuse highlights. And I've caught a million gazillion fish on it, and I just have a lot of confidence. That's my favorite shad pattern bait. Now, the secondary forage source in East Texas is without a doubt going to be brim or bluegill, whatever you want to call them. Now, these little sunfish, they're going to be some combination of green and brown throughout the year. And to me, one of the best colors that you can have is going to be grass mutant, because it has green, it has brown, and it has a little bit of a blue sheen type highlight, which those brim tend to have as well. Last but certainly not least is going to be old black and blue. You know, this is a situation right now. The lake we're on today, the water's not too terribly dirty, so we didn't use black and blue. But a lot of these lakes, when that water gets dirty, there's just not a much better bait that you can possibly throw than a black and blue swim jig in all that flooded cover. All right, let me show you guys a couple tips on how I rig these baits. You know, when I first pull a swim jig out of the box, I'm a skirt trimmer. There's nothing wrong with leaving it full. I know some guys that do that. I like my jig baits to be nice and compact, so I like to trim my skirts, trim my trailers down. We'll show you what we're talking about. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim this skirt down to about a 1/2 inch below the bend of the hook. All right, once I've got my skirt trimmed, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check my weed guard. Now, 6th Sense is really good about their weed guards come at what is, in my opinion, kind of the perfect length. I always wanna get the weed guard even with the barb. Now, this one is maybe an 1/8 of an inch or less, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, just a little bit longer than what I like. So I'll go ahead and trim just a tiny bit off of here. And then as you can see now, it's just dead even with the barb. All right, now it's time to get our trailer on there. The first thing I want to do is I want to measure it up. So I'm going to hang my bait down, and I want my hook to come out just a little bit in front of my flapping arms on a flapping type trailer. So I'm going to actually hold the bait up and kind of line it up to where I want this hook point to come out of the bait. And I'm going to see how much of that bait I need to pinch off. And I'm going to reach over here and just twist it off right there, and it's ready to go. All right, so we'll go ahead and thread it on here, and I'll show you guys just how easy it is to screw this bait onto this screw lock. So we'll thread this up just a little bit. Now I've marked my place where I want my hook to come out, get that on there, and then get it up to the screw lock, kind of bunch it up a little bit, and then just start twisting. As you can see, that bait just kind of follows it around, and we're home. Now I've got my trailer rigged up dead straight, just below the hook bend, ready to go. You know, guys, to kind of help y'all out on where to start throwing a swim jig, here's the deal. When we're in the situation that we're currently in, when things are flooded, you need to kind of get into a pocket, maybe in the back half of it, and just start covering water. And that's what makes this bait so effective, is you can be so efficient in all this heavy cover and cover a bunch of water. Sometimes when the water's rising, there can be a little bit of no rhyme or reason to where the fish will be, and that's what makes it so important to cover all that ground. Now, in a normal, typical situation, what I like to do when I'm fishing shallow cover with a swim jig is I like to look for depth changes that come in close to flats. So if I have a creek channel swing or a point that sticks out next to a flat, like let's say I'm looking at a 3-foot flat, well, if I've got that old creek channel swinging in up against the edge of it, that's the ideal situation. You just need to look for subtle depth changes that are next to expansive flats where you can cover some water with that swim jig. There's two basic kinds of trailers that I'm going to use when I'm throwing a swim jig. The first one, the one that I try to use the most often, is going to be the swim bait trailer. Now, there's totally different retrieves with each one, so I'm going to walk you through those right now. All right, so with the swim bait trailer, I'm going to want to make sure that I'm making long casts. You know, swim baits, those fish tend to follow them a lot. A swim jig trailer with a swim bait on it is no different. They'll follow it, bump it a lot sometimes before they commit to it. So I'm going to make a good long cast. All right, now I'm just going to point my rod kind of at it or just slightly up. And what that's going to do is when I hit cover, if I hit grass or any kind of cover, it's going to give me leverage to rip the bait, okay? So right now, if I'm coming along and hit some hydraulic, I can just go like that and I've got leverage. Now, if my rod is up here, I have no power. If my rod's down here, I have no power. But if I'm holding it right here, I can rip that bait and it shoots out of that grass. That's a big deal because a lot of your bites come when you contact that grass and it rips out. But here's the other top secret trick about this deal. When you have the right setup, guys, when you get that 7.3 heavy and that 50-pound braid to fish that heavy grass, you can just kind of point at it, and when it hits that grass, you just give it a little, and it shoots it out of there because you got the stout enough rod, you got the right line, it rips it out of that grass, and you can be real efficient. It's all about efficiency. Now, the second style trailer is going to be something that has flappers on the back of it. This is a little custom homemade trailer that I have a buddy of mine make for me, but it's just any type of flap and crawl that you want to use. But there's a difference in how I'll use the bait and how I'll work it. Now with this one, I don't need to necessarily make longer casts. This is more target oriented, getting up in that flooded stuff, pitching it in there, fishing around the target, bringing it back. So what I'll do is make a shorter pitch, and I'll hold my rod up a little bit and kind of work that bait and kind of steer it. And hold my rod up allows me to slow that bait down a little bit. Allows me to go a little slower because, again, remember, I'm target oriented now. With those flapping style crawls, that's when I like to get in that real thick stuff. I want it to cause as much water disturbance as it can, and so that's why I'm using that trailer, and that's why I slow it down as much as I can, because I'm trying to bring them into it, draw as much of attention as I can in that dirty flooded water. One other little trick you can do You guys have probably seen a lot of pros do this on tour when they're fishing a swim jig. Well, here's the deal. They're slowing it down, but keeping it up. Let's say that you got a lot of grass that's just below the surface or any type of flooded cover, and you want to keep that bait right around it, but you need to keep that bait from sinking down. Well, if you go real slow with that swim jig, it's gonna sink. One thing you can do is you can start shaking it. If you shake it with them flappers on there, that'll keep them things swimming, and they'll keep kicking, but the bait's barely moving. Like you see, I'm not even turning my reel handle. Like that's how slow the bait's moving, but the whole time those legs are just doing this, kicking, the skirt's flaring, you got a lot of action. So when you need to slow down around targets, pitch that thing on out there, hold it up, go shaking a little bit, slow down, catching big ones. You know, one other tactic that's gonna be really handy when you're fishing a lot of shallow flooded cover is gonna be to skip the bait in up under bushes, at different angles, get it way back in the junk. Here's a couple tips for you guys on skipping. One thing that you gotta understand, the way the bait hangs off the end of your rod is very important. Basically, the more slack you have out off the end of your rod, when you roll cast it, the higher that bait's gonna go. The shorter your slack is, the lower that bait's gonna fire out. And the whole key to skipping is to get that bait traveling as close and parallel to the water surface for as long as possible. So what you wanna do is pull just a little bit of slack on the end of your line, not much at all, and give it a good roll cast and that bait will skip right in there. All right, guys, that's it for today. We really appreciate you watching. We sure hope these tips help you. The current situation in East Texas, there's not much better bait that you can go to than this right here. Check that link out in the description and go get yourself some 6 cent swim jigs. Check that link out in the description. When you get to 6centsfishing.com, be sure you punch in the code YourLakeFortGuide. Get a 10% discount on all orders. We'll see you next time.